Good evening and welcome to today's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Toibon Jabela, your host. Let's have a look at today's front page of Namibian Sun. Tonight on the show, we are talking to Johannes Gawaxab. He's a renowned business leader and also governor of the Bank of Namibia. Of course, tonight on the show, he's not speaking very much in the capacity of governor, but more as a seasoned business executive on a variety of things, including a few quotes attributed to him that we saw in the press this week. Mr. Gawaxab, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us, really.
Thank you very much, Trevor, for having me.
Wonderful. I think on, yesterday on Wednesday, Namibian Sun carried an article in which you were quoted quite extensively reacting to the assertion that the President Hage Geingob is creating too many unnecessary commissions, task force, panels, and so forth, and you felt that that criticism was unfair, especially in the context of the high-level panel on the Namibian economy that you were chairperson of. Maybe just to, again, for those who might have missed the article, what were you saying in that particular scenario?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. What I was trying to do was to very much clear the air and paint a correct picture of the high-level panel on Namibian economy and the narrative that the president is appointing commissions, panels that are not delivering. I think that narrative is misplaced, it's disingenuous, and it does not paint the correct picture. If you look at the high-level panel on the Namibian economy, that was appointed on the 21st of March 2019 for a period of 1 year. The mandate given to that panel was to analyze the state of the Namibian economy, to provide evidence-based recommendations that could revive our economy. And we gave about 10 key recommendations at the end. We submitted 3 reports to the president, but at the end of the day, it actually boiled down to a 10-point plan. So the very first one was, let us attract foreign direct investment. We look at aggregate demand and how you normally generate and stimulate aggregate demand is through government expenditure. That, given the fiscal space, was not possible. The second area where how you grow an economy is through private investments. That was quite challenging. Private consumption is another area. If so many people have lost their jobs and we don't have households to spend as they used to. And the next one was basically net exports. So the area that we had was we need investments in the economy. So we recommended to the president, Mr. President, we need to attract investments into Namibia to revive our economy. To do that, you may wish to consider setting up an entity. And you know, today we have got the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board. They are going to help this country to attract foreign direct investment. So that was the first very big one that we said, if you look at that evidence, it's not fair to say nothing has happened. The second one was around water investments. If we need to industrialize our country, we need investment in the water infrastructure. We need to de-risk our agricultural sector from climatic changes. The country will recall that 2 or 3 years ago, we almost ran out of water in Windhoek. So we said maybe a desalination plant is something that needs to happen. Currently, Cabinet has announced that the Ministry of Agriculture and NAMWATER can continue to explore a desalination plant. And many people still have got issues around it's going to be very expensive to have water from the desalination plant. My own view is it's better to have expensive water than no water at all. Running out of water is almost inexcusable. So what we need to do is realize the country in which we are living. It's a very arid country and it is susceptible to many droughts. So we better try and mitigate against that risk. We also said we need to look at energy if we need to industrialize. And that was accepted. NamPower is doing an excellent job. They went out and they're trying to get electricity for us. And on top of that, you have got the Green Hydrogen Council that's being set up to try and leverage that opportunity for the country. We also recommended, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, it's needed. We need to set up something like the Sovereign Wealth Fund for two reasons. For intergenerational wealth transfer. If people come after us in 30, 40 years and they know that this country had some resources like diamonds, those are finite resources. So we need to make sure that we set some money aside for those people so that they can also benefit, because it's our country. It's not for this generation. The other one was, let us use the Sovereign Wealth Fund also to help develop the country and destabilize fiscus in difficult years. We know now the Cabinet has taken that decision, and the Bank of Namibia has been given that responsibility to make sure that we manage the Sovereign Wealth Fund. We also look at, as a high-level panel, on what is it making for investors to invest in our economy. And two of the things, and tourists to come to our country, was basically visas on arrival. In other countries, people could travel to a country and get a visa, whether it's tourist visa or another visa on arrival. So that has been rolled out, accepted, and at most of our border posts, you can pick up a visa on arrival. We also recommended that we need to give permanent residence to any investor, whether it's individual or a company, that's prepared to invest 500,000, the equivalent of 500,000 US dollars, not 500 million, 500,000 US dollars, so that that person can invest in our country, become a permanent resident, create jobs, pay water, buy property in our country. So those are probably the high-level stuff that we have recommended. I'm prepared to go into the others, but let me stop there. That's the high-level stuff that we have recommended.
Indeed. Thank you, Johannes. I was actually going to ask you, because one of the most important recommendations, again, that you did not mention, but I would want you to touch on it, is the one on how natural resources of the country must be handled. One of the measures that the government have adopted as a result of your recommendations is the auctioning of fishing quotas. What was the principle around that? And you also mentioned that in the article that we read in Namibian Sun, that the same should also be applied. The same principle must apply to other national resources such as minerals. If you can brief us on that one also.
Yeah, so we had extensive consultations and we look at the practice and the basis of the allocation of fishing quotas and EPLs. And we have come to the conclusion that actually that is only serving a very narrow interest. Those people who are lucky, who apply for fishing rights, and they're receiving these rights, are actually benefiting at the expense of the country. So we came to the conclusion there must be a fairer way of allocating to that. And after lengthy investigation, benchmarking, we said the best principle for Namibia would be an open and transparent auctioning process that could be effective to allocate fishing rights and also for some EPLs, because the country stands to benefit. And that was accepted. We had the first auction. It didn't go that well. We were learning. And with the second one, it went pretty well. The government has received quite a lot of good income, and that money can be used to be redistributed in all the 14 regions rather than lining the pockets of selected individuals. So that's what we have recommended. That was accepted. So one cannot really argue that if you look at all these together, that these panels are not delivering the goodies.
You touched briefly in your first intervention, Johannes, on the creation of the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board. Of course, creating it alone is not enough to say that the intended outcome of that particular pillar has been reached. What is it that should be in place for that board of Nangula Wanja to succeed? I'm asking this because for a long time, our country has rode on the narrative of peace and stability. The absence of social chaos alone is not enough ingredient to attract investment. So what is it apart from peace and stability that we must have in place to really attract investors to this country?
So what needs to be in place is we need to create an environment. The first thing that's actually easy for any country to attract foreign direct investment is confidence in the economy. So confidence for investors, confidence for investors are both domestic and foreign investors, confidence for consumers in the country. So that is the first almost condition sine qua non. It's a prerequisite for any investor is there must be confidence, there must be peace and stability in the country. There must be ease of doing business in the country. We need to identify certain priority areas so that people can come and invest. And we shouldn't hesitate and we shouldn't be ashamed. Investors are there to make money. But if they make money and in that process as a country we benefit, that's okay. Because all the other countries in the world are competing to get investments. So what needs to be in place? We need confidence in our economy. We need predictability of our laws. If the government is going to change in 3 and 4 years, the contractual obligations needs to be honored because some people are going to invest for 10, 15, 20 years. So that's the type of certainty, predictability that they would like to. But above all, confidence, ease of doing business, and we should allow them to make money if we in return gain employment and gain other benefits for the country.
Yeah. Another thing that your high-level panel also made recommendations on, Mr. Gawaxab, is finding solutions to the perpetual issue of housing. And ironically, as we talk today, the mayor of Windhoek, Dr. Joba Mpanda, held a lengthy press briefing reacting to some land grabs that were reported in parts of Katutura yesterday. What, in your recommendation, was sort of the panacea to this issue that has been haunting us for so many decades? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, if you look at the housing challenge in the country, we should actually all try and rally around a solution for in the country. Let me tell you, ours was very much evidence-based. So we didn't just go out and say, let's solve this housing problem without trying to understand that. We look at the following things before we came to recommendation on housing. About 25% of the population of Namibia, that's about 650,000 people, live in shacks or in squatter camps. Most of them earned around 2,700 Namibian dollars per month, and they are excluded from the housing finance market. It's been estimated that we have got a backlog of about 300,000 housing units, and annually we need about 30,000 housing units just to keep up and accommodate people, dignify people. In 2015, about 46% of Namibians were in urban Namibia. It's projected by 2030, about 60% of our people will be in urban towns and cities. By 2050, we'll have about 72% of all Namibians in urban part of our country. So housing is by and large an urban problem. So we said, whether we like it or not, all those people that are in squatted camps or shanty towns or in shacks, they are not going to disappear and go away tomorrow. People really looking for a dignified place they can call home. And we have recommended the following. We said, allocate land in an orderly manner, and I'm emphasizing that, in an orderly manner, to all those in informal settlements, people that are currently sitting in informal settlements. Offer that land free of charge at no cost, not on the basis of market and affordability, but as a measure of social justice, so that we can mitigate this crisis of homelessness and break the chain of poverty and inequality. So we said, give that only to the lower income groups, make it a once-off offer. Plots so granted and donated cannot be alienated or sold off within 10 years. We need to transfer and give these people title deeds. And let's get the local authorities, together with all key stakeholders, the Ministry of Urban and local government, they sit around the table and said, how can we do this orderly? Because it's not going to, and every day people are looking for a piece of land. It's going to address a big challenge. We have benchmarked this. We have looked at the example in Brazil. If you go on the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro, there's a place, people call them the favelas. In our town, people are calling them, in part of the world, calling them informal settlements. People have in Rio and Brazil, through the favelas, create the infrastructure services to the informal settlements, where they have brought in water, electricity, and people are living there. So our solution was two-pronged: allocate free of charge. And then in addition to that, you create another area. As people's living circumstances change, you could probably move them so that they can migrate to this one area where they are, to a much bigger area where you can provide better services and better housing for, so that people can go to that. So that was a very, very fundamental recommendation from the high-level panel. And I still believe we need to do that.
Indeed, Mr. Gawaxab. I mean, the Rio example reminds me of a similar intervention. I think it was in the 1940s by the Peruvian government in their capital, Lima, where they also, what they did was to adopt what they call the in situ or in situ approach, where those that had already occupied land had to be assisted in some way just to actually be allocated that land that they already occupy. And it seems to have worked wonders in Peru. As we draw towards the close, I have two quick questions for you, Mr. Gawaxab. I will give you the first one, which is around also the reform and transforming public enterprises. Again, one of your recommendations as a panel there, I understand that it was actually part of that reform recommendation that the likes of Namibia was shut down. Why is it important to undergo such reforms as far as the broader benefits of the economy are concerned?
I think the public enterprises, or SOEs, play a significant catalytic role in the economy of the country. They are there and they're important for the development and service delivery in the country. So if you need to ensure that they do that, we have to find some way that is sustainable and that's not a burden on the fiscus. That's why we have divided it in certain categories. And we started off by saying there are some SOEs that we have to retain as a government. You know, there's no way that we can outsource or change the structure of NamWater or NamPower or NamCore. For those three things, NamCore, NamPower, and NamWater, the government should retain 100% because that's service delivery and we cannot change that. But things like MTC, I think we can list MTC without doing any harm. It's such a capital intensive industry that's changing every time. And for the government to own 100% of that, we don't think that's probably the right thing to do. The government can own still a stake. That's why we said, think about listing MTC. We also think about joint ventures and partnerships and highlighted entities like the NIP, Namibia Institute of Pathology, Telecom, NWR. We said those could become maybe JVs or they could become partnerships. We said there are things where governments should seriously consider divesting in, like Venture Country Club and the waterfronts in Lutritz and the one in Zambezi.
Yeah.
Do we need to own those waterfronts? That's the question that we asked. Then we also said there are some SOEs that we need to merge, like the RFA, the RA, and the RCC. And with the airline, we said, this is such a big burden in the country. We'll probably reach a point where the sustainability of the airline has become a serious challenge for the fiscus. So, and most of those recommendations have been accepted at this point in time. So that's the evidence that I said, if you believe that with all those, that the president is still appointing panels that are not delivering, then clearly people don't have the information, and that's incorrect.
Yeah, so that exactly brings me to the last question, Mr. Gawaxab, and that is for those who are saying, you know, Mr. Gawaxab is singing for his supper. You know, the president appointed him as a governor to the Reserve Bank. He appointed him to serve on that committee, that panel, and therefore we can't expect him to say anything rather than what he's saying now. What do you say to those that hold that view?
Well, tell them, you know, I respect their views. Everybody is entitled to his or her own opinion. But given what I've said to you today, and you still believe that that's misplaced and that's not correct, so I'll probably respect that. I hope you also respect the fact that the work that the high-level panel has done, recommendations that have been implemented, accepted, we're going to see fruits of those recommendations. I hope people can look at that reality and also respecting that evidence that we have provided. But I respect the views of people who could have different views other than what I've shared today. Those are the facts. So you can ignore the facts and continue holding your own views.
Yeah, indeed. Mr. Gawaxab, thank you very much for availing your time and for really allowing us to tap into your fountain of wisdom that we respect so much. Thank you for participating tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was Johannes Gawaxab. He's a business leader, a renowned business leader who also is serving now as the governor of the Bank of Namibia, giving us those facts. To our viewers, I just want to say that starting tomorrow, we are going to have a segment on this show about the Olympics, where about 10 or 11 Namibian sports people are participating, notably Beatrice Masilingi and Christine Mboma, and of course many others. So every evening after this interview, we are going to have a sports segment, a very brief one dedicated to the updates from Tokyo, Japan. Thank you for watching. Good night.